Well, hello and good morning. Welcome to Sunday Coffee with Dr. Childress. So I just dropped a vignette just a few moments ago on the Miller family, talking about all the professionals around you. I, I grew up again, before computers and before like even we had TV and stuff and phonographs and stuff. It was a primitive stage. We had phonographs, but they were stone and we had to carve them. And it was like really bad, like the Flintstones. But one of the things I had, was this little picture book where all these pictures of people in various professions, but it was divided into strips. So you could make a policeman with, a ballet dancers, tutu on it, and you could mix and match. And then you spent some time as a kid, like making these crazy pictures. But that's kind of what we have in pattern matches. It's like for the vignettes, is we just have these basic pattern, and then you can flip over various additions and implications, and so um, construct the patterns that match the specifics. So when people consult with me on general public consults, what I do is I put you in your pattern. And the moment I have you located in a pattern, I can answer all your questions about the pattern, not about your life, because I haven't talked to anybody. I don't know your life, but I do know the pattern. So that's what I do is I just talk about patterns. And if the pattern fits for you, then yay, that's useful information. If it doesn't somehow, well, then it doesn't fit because I don't know your family. I don't know who you are. And so that's basically what I do. And you can do the same thing. You just once you recognize a pattern, then oh, it all makes sense. The problem is if you don't recognize the patterns of the pathology, then everything seems chaotic. If I don't know the patterns of autism, then I've just got a bunch of chaotic stuff going on with this autistic child. But if I know there's sensory motor processing problems, all of a sudden I begin to go, oh, wait, I think we have some, vestibular kind of stuff, or, or something going on, proprioceptive kind of imbalances, because I recognize the patterns of that would reflect that. Oh, I think we have problems in pragmatics, but we don't have problems over here in the language. So it helps a lot to know the patterns. That's what competence is. So you learn competence. I always say the education system prepares us to learn our doctoral degrees, but it's the pathology that teaches us. So when we assess and diagnose the pathology, it's teaching us its features. And when we treat the pathology teaches us its core. And so that's where we really get our understanding is from interacting with the pathology. And the education system just gives us the knowledge base to do that. So that's where competence comes from, working with the pathology. Working with ADHD, you're now competent in the patterns. You know all the patterns. And then because it's a close association or differential with autism, you may begin to work with autism and learn the autism patterns. Now you're more competent. And then you maybe start working with trauma kids. And so now you're up into knowing the patterns of trauma, the patterns of ADHD, and the patterns of autism. And you've expanded your competence based on your work experience. Now, if you're moving into a new domain, like me, I'm a trauma psychologist, transgenerational trauma in children. But what about PTSD in a war veteran? Well, I'm trauma psychologist. I understand PTSD, but I haven't necessarily worked in the culture of the military and worked with that specific type of trauma going on. That'd be more Bessel van der Kolk's kind of stuff. And so if I'm going to work over there, I have to then get additional training. So I might take a course, an online course, or I might consult with somebody who works in that field. So I'm going to get the educational background that prepares me then to actually work with the PTSD, and that will teach me what's going on. Work assessing it will teach me its features. Treating it will teach me its core. I just need the background information as I come in, and that's what competence represents for psychologists. So when you're evaluating somebody for the competence, look to their vita, look for where they worked. The problem with the forensic custody evaluators, they've had one job, private practice in the family courts. So they're not competent with any pathology because they've never encountered any pathology that would teach them. They have had no teachers. And the pathology is the one that teaches us. I don't care what your education is. So That's the issue surrounding competence on things. But that's not what I wanted to talk to you about today. So I am in my consulting practice here. AI is here, okay, and we need to integrate it because it's not coming; it's here, and it has profound implications for the family courts because everybody fights about everything in the family courts, and it's called staff splitting. It's a symptom feature of the pathology where the professionals begin arguing amongst themselves, arguing about the patient's treatment, or arguing about the behavior of other professionals around that is a symptom feature of working with borderline personality pathology, narcissistic as well, but particularly borderline. It's called staff splitting, Linehan, and it's a feature of what's called parallel process. So up on my Facebook page, I've been teaching people about what parallel process is relative to our society and what's going on in the pathology in the family court for a reason, because parallel process is applicable to the situation over here. And it's particularly applicable on the staff splitting piece where the polarization, the sides of the borderline, and the professionals side up a parallel process to the splitting. And so now we got, the good therapists and the bad therapists and stuff. And it needs to stop because that's really destructive to the child and the client when the mental health people are a symptom rather than the treatment. So if you're going to work with borderline pathology, which everybody in the family courts is, then we need to understand staff splitting and knock it off. We need to come together. The way we do that is giving up all these made up pathology labels that just keep us locked forever into controversy and conflict. So something like parental alienation feeds the staff splitting because one professional says it's parental alienation and the other one says there's no such thing. And now we got the professionals fighting about the patient, the behavior of the other professionals around the patient, and all of that is destructive. So if we drop the use of this thought with a word like parental alienation and return to something we all agree on, which is the DSM-5. And so we apply the DSM-5. Lo and behold, it's a persecutory delusion. It's a factitious disorder. We didn't need that bizarre little label. It's already defined. It's already in the DSM. That's a thought disorder. They're coming up with we need to get parental alienation in the DSM. No, you don't. It's already in there. The persecutory delusion, factitious disorder. Just apply the DSM. And the moment you do that, we get a child psychological abuse whole situation. We never needed that in the first place. And so it's just a really bad thing to do. So in order to the staff splitting, there's two wonderful quotes by Linehan. I offer the first one about what it is, arguing about the patient and behavior of the other professionals around the patient. That's her quote about staff splitting. But she also has a nice quote about what the resolution for that is. And essentially, it's to recognize a polarity has emerged and then to recognize that each pole in that polarity has a valid component, and then you work for integration of those two. So what's the polar things here? So the parental alienation, people say, there's a pathology in the family courts. Well, that's true. There is a pathology. It's a shared delusion, factitious disorder. So I agree there's a pathology. That's the valid part of their pole. What I disagree with, though, what obviously is wrong, is that it's a new form of pathology unique to the family court, so we need this whole unique new pathology label. No, that's not true. There is a pathology. Now, the other side of the pole is that we need to ground ourselves in the DSM-5 and establish knowledge, attachment, personality disorder, child abuse, complex trauma. So we need to ground ourselves in established knowledge. That's true. But the DSM-5 or the use of that so far has not identified the pathology. And I would argue it's because it hasn't been applied yet. Okay, the forensic psychologists don't diagnose things. So I'll read their forensic custody evaluations, not a single diagnosis. And so they're missing the diagnosis of a shared, they're not applying the DSM-5. So of course it's not in the DSM, and they're not applying it. And the same with the PIS people. They're off making up new forms of pathology rather than applying the DSM-5. So both sides of the poll are accurate. There is a pathology, and it's definable by the DSM-5. The moment we do that, the problem's solved, the staff splitting ends, all the professionals can begin saying, does this meet criteria for the DSM-5 criteria? Yes, it does. And how do we assess for that, and what do we do? And so we can all come together as mental health professionals in a single voice. Now, where AI comes in just magnificently is stopping the staff splitting. It gives us a nice neutral voice looking at stuff. And so, in terms of my role, second opinion review in the family courts, let's say I'm brought a custody evaluation, really bad custody evaluation. Oh my God, it's awful. And so I'm brought that for a second opinion review, meaningful scrutiny from the New York Blue Ribbon Commission to prevent disastrous consequences that can result. So if I'm brought that for review, then I will go through it line by line, and that generates a catalog of concerns, and then do a report. Very time consuming kind of process, but I need to document it because everybody's going to be fighting about it, and so we need to bring the fighting to the close. And then the opposing party is going to say I'm biased, and then everybody's going to fight about me and my involvement. Well, now, let's say a client comes in, I can use AI to also take a look at their custody. I have a case like that where I've been brought on to do my analysis. I'm going to do line by line and do my standard analysis. In addition, I'm developing an AI component to my practice. I've got a consultant. We're working on it, like some research articles on it and stuff. So I'm incorporating AI formally into my consulting practice because I believe it would be a benefit to the parents, a benefit to the children, and substantial benefit to the courts, because it removes the staff splitting component. The court can get nice, clean evidence. And the evidence is, you can cross-examine the evidence. You can cross-examine ChatGPT. Home, and you can ask it the same questions, fine. And if you have additional questions, Your Honor, you can ask ChatGPT, and they give you answers. So in terms of providing professional level information, I think AI is excellent in providing. You want education of the court? Well, you can educate the court. What about whatever it wants using AI in the privacy of the court chambers and at home at night, sitting around over, after dinner, and you want to cross-examine the witness about something, you can go on and it remembers everything you had before. And so AI has wonderful applications in the family courts. So that's what I'm currently developing, and it's pretty exciting about all the different applications that it has. And it's only getting better, because they say AI doubles every 6 months. So by 2 years, we're going to have some really good stuff. And as court's going to integrate it on issues like scheduling and calendaring and those sorts of things, it's going to be very helpful for that. And decision making. It's going to be very interesting how the legal system handles this new source of information. I think it is spot on relevant to expert testimony in the family courts. I think we can clean up expert testimony tremendously, and it's going to have profound implications on treatment and ensuring that we get an accurate diagnosis and stuff. Because you can just ask it, and you can give it the symptoms, it'll tell you possibilities, and you can run down the list, and it's like supportive. So just to share my little venture here that I'm really excited about. So you can get an AI, and right now we're just in the initial phases to see, is the AI, or how credible and accurate is the AI relative to professional level information? That's our first question. We're going to be working on a little content analysis of AI. How accurate is it, accurate and credible in reporting on professional level information? That's a research question. The null hypothesis is that no, it's not. It's unreliable. It's just a language thing, and it doesn't really understand the professional level information. The research hypothesis is yes, it can. It does comprehend the professional level information at a professional level of usage. And so it is reliable for presenting professional level analysis and information regarding various things, Okay, and particularly what we're looking at is family court pathology. So, so that's one piece, and then the other is just how it can be incorporated more broadly into the family courts on consulting, on treatment, and those sorts of features. So I've got a little research project I'm developing, an AI consultant I'm looking to bring on, and some I got a couple of staff that they're helping me with articles and research and keeping data clean and that sort of thing as we go forward. This is an emerging field, so let's get some data on it. Let's find out what's happening because it's here. 5 years from now, it's going to be a very different landscape in the family courts regarding family custody conflict and the testimony for the courts. Think how cheap, inexpensive it is compared to a Dr. Childress eval. So if you come into me previously in the flatland world of pre-AI, then I have to do line by line. That's going to take me a couple days, and pretty intensive days, full days doing that. And then my report writing and putting it all together. So that's a little time intensive on my part. If we can develop a good AI approach to doing that analysis, which is what we're working on, something the court can rely on, a nice little protocol for how to do this, then that's cheap. You upload your documents or you upload the information even, because it handles hypotheticals fine. So you upload the information from both people. And now it could do a nice analysis of it. And it's free, basically. And so we will still want to run it by professional clinical eyes. So I'd look at it just like if you got a radiology report, you don't accept the AI interpretation of the radiology. It's really good. It's captured stuff. It knows stuff. But you get an actual human to look at it and go, yep, that makes sense. And yep, that's consistent. And so instead of having the human do all the work, they just come by and do second opinions on the AI. And so for me, as I'm looking at that, I would generate the AI, then I'd provide a second opinion on it. And because of my knowledge, if there's something that I'm seeing the AI is not, I can query that. I can say, add this information or add information from family systems related to this. And is that a relevant consideration? And the AI pops back and says, yes, it is. Oh my goodness, look at all these sorts of things. For example, on a recent query, I was doing all this other stuff, delusional thought disorders. And then I asked specifically, take the information sets from family systems, specifically around cross-generational coalitions, and the information sets about narcissistic borderline and dark personalities, specifically the symptom of splitting. Add those two together, splitting and cross-generational coalition and the surrounding information sets. And what do we get? And AI said, wow, this is really productive. Here's all the things you get. Okay. And it's ChatGPT talking to the judge or talking to the psychologist, not Dr. Childress. This is like information. Okay. And so we can stop the fighting and we can get professional information. And if the opposing counsel or the other mental health professional doesn't agree with the chat information, they can go on chat and ask their additional questions and get additional information. And so we have a testifying witness in chat GPT that is subject to cross-examination 24/7 by whoever wants to cross-examine the witness about anything. And so this applicability of AI is phenomenal. And it's going to replace me as an expert witness. It's going to replace a lot of jobs, like these low-paying jobs. You just bring in AI to replace them. Okay, expert witness in the family court doing all that stuff. That's exactly the type of thing that AI can do better. It will need oversight. So, yay, I'm not going to entirely lose my job, but I will. And so I got to adapt, and we will adapt. And to close off here on my Sunday morning coffee, that is so incredibly important, is the willingness of the professionals to adapt. And here's why. We are going to fix the problem in the family courts. My goal is in 5 years, 2 years, there won't be a family court problem. It'll be gone. We won't need like things like custody evaluations and reunification therapists and parenting coordinators and GA. All of that will be gone because the problem is going to be fixed. And so all the roles that we have related to the problem, all of us need to be prepared to give up those professional roles because we're going to fix it. Now, if we become attached to our roles, then we need the problem for our roles, so we will not solve the problem because we have a conflict of interest with our roles. And that's really important for all clinical psychologists to understand from the very entry into the practice. The goal of all therapists, all clinical psychologists, is to work themselves out of a job as fast as possible. The faster you are no longer needed in your job, the better you are at your job as a clinical psychologist. If you have 2 years of therapy, that's a failed clinical psychologist. Holy cow, I can fix the problem in 3 months. Okay. So, and there's a conflict of interest when we start to need the problem for our own benefit, for our own financial benefit, because we need our client caseload fill, or for our own personal benefit of being, I'm the wonderful human. And so, they come in and feed our ego without getting any productive impact in their lives. And so that's always a concern for psychologists, is we need to be comfortable leaving our job, getting fired. Okay, we don't not being needed anymore. You, the pathology solved. I'm not needed anymore. So, and with AI, a lot of us psychology people are not going to be needed anymore. More broadly in society, I think that's true as well. I think a lot of the psychotherapy stuff that started with Freud and went to B.F. Skinner and over to family, so a lot of that can be replaced through this emerging AI for therapy in many wonderful ways. You got the world's most intelligent therapist, and if we get the interface a little clean, they can do better than if you want a person, you want actually the human go get it. But I think for a lot of people, that interim step of AI therapy is going to be extremely helpful. And that's one of the things I'm going to be working on, is an adaptation of that, going back to an earlier article I wrote way back in the 90s about when internet and interventions. I recommend that we adapt a journaling approach because that's a text-based approach and stuff, and it's got a lot of structure to it, and it's an individual approach that would work well with a companion of the computer, and I think it works extremely well with AI. So if we bring in a journaling approach such as Ira Progoff's intensive journaling, you bring in an intensive or a structured way to do journaling, to highlight information and examine information about your life, and then you add an augmentation of AI to that process where you're journaling and AI is giving you feedback and you're discussing things about your life that were brought up by the journaling process. I think that's an excellent therapeutic model. So that's what I'll be working with my little minions, my little research lab, or whatever. I call it the project. I'll be working with them as coming up with more formally that intervention approach, either within the scope of our project, or just more obviously publication and get it out there, let other people do it, and give it out to the world. And it's a competitive world right now. You can't rely on the past. It's not the world of you leave high school, you get married, you get your factory job, and you stay there for 20 years. You got to keep running on this world that's coming. You got to stay current. I am old guy, but going into cyberspace. The curious one, the one I like about the whole piece, is if I can get like a Dr. Childress AI component that kind of mimics how I think. I think of it like having a grad student. So the grad student, we have the information. This guy's, boy, has it read all the background. Woohoo! I've got a very intelligent grad student from book knowledge. But now if I get an AI as a grad student, clinical assistant, I can help facilitate the pathology teaching my grad student, okay, about its features and about its core. And so that's where I can help the AI become a clinical psychologist, mimic the way I approach things as a clinical psychologist. But from all my experience with ADHD, autism, trauma, all this stuff, how do I approach a situation as a clinical psychologist and process the information, as well as then what information are we processing? So by the time we're finished, we're going to have a nice little AI package that's basically mimics what I do as a psychologist. And then when I die and leave the planet, yay! When I die and leave the planet, you still have like a Dr. Childress AI. And this is the part that I love. It can pull on all my imagery from all my videos to recreate me saying the stuff I would actually say if I was here, which I find just like freakily weird kind of thing of just leaving and staying but staying in a flexible way. Like, did I just cross a boundary? I don't know. I love that shit. So anyway, with that, I'm going to go off to my Sunday here, and excited about developments going forward, and what a wild world we're in. So with that, good luck everybody, and take care. Bye bye.